A Scottsdale couple that lived a luxurious lifestyle at the expense of taxpayers will now spend several years in federal prison.
America, we need to talk about something that's going to make your blood boil. While you're struggling to pay your medical bills, while seniors are rationing their medications, a couple in Arizona just got caught running a $1.2 billion healthcare fraud scheme. They were buying $300,000 Ferraris and $6 million mansions while targeting dying hospice patients. Some who died the very day they received unnecessary medical procedures. And when I tell you how they try to flee the country with books on how to disappear without a trace, you're going to understand everything that's wrong with our system.
Scottsdale couple is accused of being at the center of a $900 million healthcare scam that targeted dying hospice patients.
The Department of Justice said that the suspects used a large chunk of that money to fulfill their lavish lifestyle.
What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. This story perfectly illustrates what happens when people look at government healthcare programs and see them as their personal ATM machine. Let me introduce you to Alexandra Gehrke and Gehrke King, a Phoenix couple who looked at Medicare and said, you know what? This is our lottery ticket. These two had zero medical training, zero, but they figured out how to steal more money from healthcare programs than most hospitals see in a decade.
Gehrke King and Alexandra Gehrke defrauded Medicare with a $1 billion scheme, billing for medically unnecessary wound grafts for elderly and terminally ill patients.
Here's what really gets me about this case. They weren't even trying to hide it. There were photos of Alexandra Gehrke posted on LinkedIn 2 years ago, showing her and Gehrke King at the symposium at Advanced Wound Care. They were literally networking at medical conferences while running a $1 billion fraud scheme. The audacity here is off the charts. Alexandria owned Apex Medical LLC and was incentivizing medical untrained sales reps to find Medicare patients with wounds of any size or severity. Any size. We're talking about people targeting paper cuts and treating them like major medical emergencies.
38-year-old Alexandra Gehrke and 49-year-old Gehrke King of Scottsdale face several federal charges, including healthcare fraud, conspiracy, receiving kickbacks, and money laundering.
King started off as a sales rep at Apex, but according to the government, his wife orchestrated the entire scheme. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a calculated, systematic plan to defraud the American healthcare system. Here's how their operation worked, and it's absolutely diabolical. Alexandria hired what they called sales representatives, people with no medical training, whose job was to literally hunt down elderly patients and hospice patients. Think about that for a second. They were targeting people who were literally dying.
The Department of Justice claims all that luxury for Gehrke King and Alexandra Gehrke came from the pockets of the taxpayer in a massive healthcare scheme that lasted 2 years.
These weren't just any patients. They were specifically going after elderly people and hospice patients, the most vulnerable people in our healthcare system, people who were too sick to question what was actually happening to them. The sales reps would find patients with wounds of any size, and I mean any size, like a paper cut size, perfect. A small scratch, even better, because here's the kicker. They would order massive wound grafts regardless of the actual wound size. Alexandria instructed her sales team to only order grafts that were 4 by 6 centimeters or larger, even if the wounds were tiny. Why? Because bigger grafts meant bigger insurance payouts. They were literally putting bandages the size of playing cards on wounds that were the size of toothpicks. And get this, they were applying these grafts to wounds that have already healed. To infected wounds were grafted to make things worse. To wounds that weren't responding to treatment. They didn't care about the patients. They cared about the money. Now here's where it really gets criminal. The couple ordered as many allografts as possible to be placed on a patient's wounds, receiving around $280 million in illegal kickbacks from the distributor of that particular product.
Court documents say Gehrke and King billed Medicare $1 million per patient for high-priced skin grafts to be applied to vulnerable patients' wounds.
Let me break that down for you. They were billing Medicare $1 million per patient, per patient for skin grafts that cost a fraction of that amount. And they were getting nearly $300 million in kickbacks alone. This wasn't healthcare. This was a pyramid scheme using dying patients as props. Alexandria was at the top getting massive kickbacks from graft distributors. And then she was paying her sales reps tens of millions of dollars in unlawful kickbacks to keep finding more victims. And here's the part that should make every American furious. They were doing this without coordination with the patient's treating physicians. They were overriding medical judgment with sales quotas. Doctors who actually knew these patients weren't even consulted. Let me break down the scale of this fraud for you because the numbers are absolutely staggering. $1.2 billion in false claims submitted to Medicare, over $960 million stolen from federal programs like Medicare and TRICARE, $615 million actually paid out by insurance companies, $280 million in kickbacks to Alexandria alone. We're talking about more money than some small country's entire healthcare budget. And this was just two people with no medical training running a scam out of Phoenix.
According to this federal indictment, the couple, through companies they owned, caused nearly $1 billion worth of fraudulent claims to Medicare, targeting terminally ill hospice patients.
Terminally ill hospice patients, people who were dying. The indictment says some patients died the day of the procedure. Think about that. People spent their final hours on earth being used as billing codes by these criminals. The document claims they were giving patients unreasonable and unnecessary skin grafts, unreasonable and unnecessary procedures to people who were already suffering. That's not healthcare fraud. That's torture for profit. So what did they do with all this stolen money? Did they invest it wisely? Did they put it aside for when investigators came knocking? No, they did not. They went on a shopping spree of a lifetime.
Money prosecutors say was used to fund their lavish lifestyle, including the purchase of this Scottsdale home.
The government seized nearly $100 million in assets, including 4 luxury vehicles worth over $980,000. We're talking about a $300,000 Ferrari and multiple high-end Mercedes Benzes parked in the driveway of their $6 million Scottsdale home. But it wasn't just cars. They had $22 million in life insurance and annuities, bank accounts with over $68 million, jewelry, precious metals, and gold bars. The government found $350,000 in cash during the search of their home. Think about this. While elderly patients were getting unnecessary medical procedures, while families were struggling to pay legitimate medical bills, these two were buying Ferraris and gold bars with stolen Medicare money. Here's where the story gets even more wild. When investigators started closing in, Alexandria and Jeffrey King didn't just lawyer up, they tried to flee the country.
Fox 10 obtained the government's motion for detention filed just days ago, calling Gehrke and King significant flight risks.
The government's motion for detention called them a significant flight risk because they had over $500,000 in gold bars and gold coins, plus $52 million held in 11 different bank accounts. But here's what shows you they knew exactly what they were doing. When authorities searched their home, they found a note to Alexandria's housekeeper asking her to notify them of any indictment while they would be on a quote-unquote trip to Europe.
Authorities found 2 books titled How to Disappear, Erase Your Digital Footprint, Leave False Trails, and Vanish Without a Trace, and the Criminal Law Handbook.
These people were planning to disappear with nearly $1 billion in stolen healthcare money. Alexandria even left instructions for relatives on how to access and transfer her cryptocurrency during her absence, using verbal orders in code. This wasn't panic. This was a carefully planned escape strategy. The end came at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Authorities arrested them as they were about to board a flight heading out of the country. They literally caught them trying to flee with stolen Medicare money.
Authorities say they were just about to board a flight heading out of the country when they were finally arrested.
When Jeffrey King got sentenced to 14 years in prison, he broke down sobbing in court. And when the judge announced his sentence, you know what he did? He looked at the prosecutors and whispered, "Why? Why? Really? You stole over $1 billion from healthcare programs. You targeted dying patients. You buy Ferraris with Medicare money, and you're asking why when you get caught?"
King was visibly emotional in court, sobbing at times, and after the sentence was announced, he even looked at the prosecution, whispering, "Why?"
The judge recommended that he be housed at federal prison in Sanford. His family and attorney didn't want to give any comment after the court hearing. Alexandria got 15 and a half years in federal prison and must pay nearly $615 $14 million in restitution. This case shows you everything wrong with our healthcare system. When fraud is this easy, when oversight was this weak, when criminals can steal over $1 billion before getting caught, the system is fundamentally broken.
Judge Rosalind Silver said it herself today in court, quote, "They were in it for greed." She sentenced King to 14 years in federal prison.
This couple had no medical training whatsoever. They were telling nurse practitioners to suspend their medical judgment and just apply whatever grafts the sales team ordered. Think about that. People with no medical knowledge were overriding trained medical professionals because sales quotas mattered more than patient care. The healthcare fraud strike force has charged over 5,800 defendants who collectively billed over $30 billion in fraudulent claims. $30 billion. That's not a few bad apples. That is a systematic problem. While these two were buying luxury cars and multi-million-dollar life insurance policies, real patients were suffering. Every dollar that they stole was a dollar that couldn't go to legitimate medical care. America, this $1.2 billion Medicare fraud case proves that healthcare fraud isn't just about money. It's about trust. When criminals target the most vulnerable patients, when they turn medical care into a profit scheme, they're not just stealing money, they're destroying the foundation of healthcare itself. Alexandra Gehrke and Jeffrey King looked at dying patients and saw dollar signs. They turned hospice care into a cash cow. They bought Ferraris with money meant to help sick people and almost got away with it. The only reason why they got caught is because somebody finally noticed that $1.2 billion in wound graft claims seemed a little excessive. Think about how many small frauds are still happening right now that nobody noticed yet. Now they're facing decades in prison and hundreds of millions of dollars in restitution. But here's the question that nobody's asking. Where's the rest of the money? They stole $1.2 billion and they're only paying back about a half of that. The moral of the story is simple. When healthcare becomes a business first and patient care second, this is what happens. Criminals see opportunity where patients see hope. Let me know what you think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.